Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Okay, I need to confess something to you. I had a really bad habit. And I did it all the time. I would be in a hurry and we would be somewhere at a store. I'd have all my kids with me and someone would ask them something or someone would be having a little conversation with them. I didn't mean to, but I would jump in and answer for my kid because maybe we were trying to hurry. Maybe there was a lot of noise in the room and I didn't know if my child heard them. Maybe I just needed us to wrap things up and get out the door. But there were times that I would sort of talk for my kids instead of letting them work it out for themselves, instead of just being patient and taking the time to let them do what they needed to do in that conversation. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr, and this is God on the Go, part of the Purposely Podcast Network, where we want to help you make the minutes matter for these episodes to be things that start conversations with you and your family about different concepts and values and character traits that we see when we're part of the kingdom of God. So yeah, I used to do that. I used to really answer quickly and often for some of my kids when they were younger. And we're in a series called Make Room. And here's the problem. I was not making room to let my kid do what they needed to do. I was not making room to let my kid craft their own answer. And that can be an issue too for us, sometimes with God. We don't make room to let God do what he's going to do, to let God work. Now, this whole idea about making room, we've been talking in this series about making room for people in your new class, making room for people who are sometimes misunderstood or left out, making room to consider that you might be wrong, to make room to learn something new. And today, in making room for God to work, well, it's one of those lessons that I've had to learn. I am still learning, and I've often had to learn the hard way. Making room can be kind of a challenge, and yet it also means that when we make room for new things in our life, when we look for ways in which God may be doing something different than what we expected, well, it allows us to live more fully, to live with greater trust about what God can do. It makes me think about how a lot of people move every year. And do you know what one of the top reasons is when people say that they changed houses? It's because they say they needed more room. 30% of people who moved last year said they moved because they needed more room. If we're going to grow in our relationship with God, we're going to need more room to allow him to do what only he can do, to allow him to do his work instead of trying to answer for him or throw our plans in front of him and expect him to do it our way. Now, here's the good news. We're not the only humans who have struggled with this from time to time. Even Peter, one of Jesus's disciples, a guy who was a good friend to Jesus and had walked with Jesus and had seen God do incredible things through Jesus, he still struggled with this idea of making room to let God work. Peter was just convinced that there were certain people who were not going to be in the kingdom of God, that the message of Jesus was not for them. And so God showed him through a variety of different ways and through visions that, in fact, God had a different plan, that Peter was going to have to make room in the way that he thought things should go and realize that God had something new that he was going to do. And after Peter began to make room to see what God was going to do, he then realized that people that he had not thought would be part of God's plan were going to be part of God's plan. For a while, Peter thought that only the Jews would be part of God's plan. But then God showed him that no, actually people who weren't Jews, people called the Gentiles, would also be included in the kingdom of God when they accepted Jesus. Acts 10, verse 34 through 35 says, "I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right." Peter was able to see this because he was willing to make room to see how God was going to work. What's something for you that you wanted to do one way, but when you made room for God, you realized it was going to go a different way? I bet your mom or dad has a story about a time where they had to make room to back off, to stop telling God how they wanted things to be done, and to make room for God to work out his plan. What's something like that for you? Here's what's awesome. When we make room in our plans and all of our goals and all of our to-do lists, when we make room for God, when we make room to let him do what only he can do, well, we get to see some awesome things. We get to have an even bigger understanding of who God is and how he works when we're willing to make room. A big thank you to George Fox University, the sponsor of God on the Go. George Fox University has such a unique university model. It's situated in gorgeous Oregon. Your students there will be individually known and appreciated for who God has designed them to be. I want to encourage you to go to georgefox.edu to learn more about George Fox University, and I'll see you next time here at God on the Go.